The school board meeting of Tuesday, August 27th will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. If a member of the public or the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we will continue this meeting. As you look at the agenda, are there any changes to the agenda as we begin? Yes, Tim?
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you. A couple of things under the call to order. If appropriate, every agenda item is subject to potential action. And the second point is if any board member feels that an item on the consent agenda warrants discussion, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and set aside for discussion. In that way, the consent agenda will be approved in one motion. That request to set something aside should be made now, or certainly before we get to the consent agenda. Tim, yes.
I'm sorry, I have one small amendment to make to the minutes.
We passed on that already. We moved on from that point.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, that was a tease, I'm sorry. Yes, of course, go ahead.
Oh, right now?
Oh, yes.
Well, we,
Okay. The
I'm
minutes,
sorry,
Sorry.
okay, go ahead.
So I think that you would actually pull them out of consent agenda and set them aside and either deal with them first and then just for clarity, specifying which minutes and they get pulled out of consent agenda.
Yes, I didn't say that?
No.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. Yes, so Tim, back to you.
okay, the minutes show that Richard Levy sent
Minutes
out.
of which date?
Pardon me?
They're two sets of minutes.
Oh,
There's August
It was
13th
from,
and
it was from
August.
the 13th if it's Richard Levy.
yes, thank you. So it shows him sending out a questionnaire to families. Richard said that Keith Lyman made a survey to send out to families. So it was Keith Lyman that sent the survey out, not Richard Levy. Got all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that is an amendment to the minutes of
13.
August 13th. Okay, yes, Anne.
I would also like to amend the minutes of August 13th to point out that Nancy's name is spelled W-I-E-S-E.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other amendments to the agenda? So 2 of them for August 13th. Okay. Any changes to the agenda, going back to that point before we move on? All right. Student matters. I don't know if any students are online at this point. It is time to voice your concerns, your suggestions. This is space for students to speak. And I do not see any students online. Okay, we are moving on to public comment on non-agenda items. This time is to provide the public the opportunity to speak to agenda items or any other relevant topic. This is a time for the board to listen and to take notes. It is not a time for the board to respond to comments or engage in a dialogue with the public. If appropriate, the board and administration will work on next steps. So this is time for the public. And as you speak, please state your name and your town. Yes.
Hello and good evening. My name is Martha Noyce and I'm a resident and a property owner here in Brattleboro. I've been a school teacher for 40 years and I've recently retired from teaching, however, from another state. My purpose this evening is to ask the WSESU board directors and members to please begin to have conversations regarding cutting the school budget. Ask amongst yourselves and various committees, where could we cut back? Where could we consolidate? Are there sacrifices that might be made? Or might we just have to say no?
Would you state your name again, please?
Martha Noyce.
Okay, thank you very much.
Would it be possible for me to leave this with the secretary for it to be?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Is there any other comment from the public? Yes.
Hi. My name is Eileen Hayes Arama. I work at BAMS as a social worker, a school social worker, and my daughter is in her senior year at VUHS. And I prepared a little statement because I get really nervous when I speak in front of people. So, first off, I value and appreciate WSESD's efforts to address social justice issues, teaching more than tolerance through celebrating our diversity and learning about each other has great value in our schools and communities. I see and recognize the actions of our teachers and administrators as I work and the dedication of all of us to support our students in experiencing connection here at our schools. And I have a question. What are we doing to address the rise of anti-Semitism nationally, locally, and globally? Jews worldwide make up approximately 0.2% of the global population. Jews are less than 2.5% of the population in the US, and as much as a possible 3% in Vermont. In the year 2022, here in the US, 60% of reported religious hate crimes were perpetrated against Jews. 60%. Of the reported religious-based crimes, there were 2,042 reported incidents based on religion, and more than half of these, 1,122, were driven by anti-Jewish bias. Incidents involving anti-Muslim were 158, and anti-Sikh, 181. Sentiments remained at similar levels compared to 2021, and that's from the FBI. This predates October 7, 2023, and reports of hate crimes toward Jews have increased significantly. There is yet FBI statistics for 2023. However, there are some reports that estimate up to 350% increases in the past 10 months. Much of these more recent reports depict calls of anti-Israel and anti-Zionism. Many historians equate these sentiments at this level as the newest iteration of anti-Semitism. According to Pew Research reports, 40% of US Jews see Israel as essential, and an additional 32% of US Jews see Israel as important. This means that the mass majority of American Jews would likely call themselves Zionists or pro-Israel. So I ask the board and the administration again, what are we doing collectively to address anti-Semitism? Thank you.
Is there any other comment from the public during this session? I don't don't see any hands up on my screen. All right, we are going to move on at this point. Thank you. We are looking at board matters. Are there any leadership council updates at this time? Herbie?
Are you gonna do the Putney one? Okay.
Sorry, just pulling up my email. So,
Kim?
yes. We have not set the dates yet for the ongoing leadership council, but John Sessions is going to be doing a special meeting on Wednesday, 9/11 at 6:30 p.m. at the Putney Public Library. And it's to connect with the whole Putney community. And
I think it's related to,
the playground.
no, I think it's actually related to visioning and trying to, take the CIP and, open it up to community discussion. So it's not, that's not how he invited people, but that's the essence of what he's trying to do. And the leadership council, you know, that's where it came from, that idea.
So everyone is welcome to attend, whether we're residents of Putney
Yes.
or not?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's taking place at the Putney Library, Wednesday, 9/11 at 6:30 p.m.
Correct.
Thank you, and I presume this will be heavily advertised.
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. Any other announcements having to do with Leadership Council?
Excuse me, Deborah, I have my hand up.
I see you, Liz. Yes. Liz?
Also, part of the having this meeting is to introduce John to the broader community out.
For a moment. Liz, can you begin again, please?
Yeah, part of the reason for this public meeting is also to introduce John to the broader community, because that the connection between the broader community and the school has really decreased since the merger. And it's been a huge concern of mine for a couple of years now. So hopefully we will get a lot of people who don't have kids in the school, so that they can better connect with the school. It used to be done at town meeting, and since that part of town meeting's gone, they have little to no idea. So I wanted to add that comment in there.
Liz is from Putney. Thank you very much. Any other announcements under Leadership Council updates? All right.
I mean, there is going to be a VUHS Leadership Council meeting coming up, I think, next Tuesday. Thursday? Tuesday.
Okay. So I'm sure all of the leadership councils are busy meeting at this time, and it behooves us and the community to go to the website and go to leadership councils and acknowledge and notice the dates of these meetings. Okay, thank you. All right, so we are moving on to board subcommittees. Sean.
Yeah, the Finance Committee met just prior to this meeting, and our last meeting prior to that was on June 3rd. And this is a pretty exciting time of the year because it's the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. And so all the information is favorable. So it's a huge undertaking, and Frank has done all the reporting required by the AOE. The biggest last deadline was August 15th. That has been completed. So tonight we got an overview of capital plan, the financial statement overview, and it was really heartening to see that we're on a solid footing financially.
So, in support of that remark, I'd like to acknowledge that the Finance Committee met right before this meeting, and it was recorded. And then, later on in this meeting, we are doing a fiscal report. Yeah, thank you, Sean. Okay, anything else under board subcommittees? All right, the next item is the VSBA Conference that's coming up August 24th through the 25th. So it's Thursday into Friday, and I was very explicit on the agenda. The deadline for registering is September 13th. If you plan to attend, please register immediately and let Mo Hart know that you have registered. Copy me on that as well. And please know that all hotel arrangements will be made by Mo Hart. So she will consolidate all of us and the numbers for that. So don't make your own hotel reservations, please. Okay? The next point on the agenda is the collective bargaining process. This came up in discussion at the most recent supervisory union board meeting. And Ann, do you want to chat about that a little bit?
Sure. We are due for a renegotiation of our teacher and staff contract this year. Customarily, the SU handles that, but I had a talk with Pietro, and he would appreciate and thinks we should have representation on the bargaining committee from all three boards. So this board will want to give some thought as to who they'd like to sit. Possibly two people.
Yeah, I strongly recommend 2 or more. It will provide interesting crosstalk if 2 people are involved. There are a couple of points I want to make about this process of collective bargaining. The commitment it's a heavy commitment. If you commit to being a board representative in this process, you are committing to attend every meeting. And the meeting cycle, my understanding, runs from November, potentially up to March, with 1 meeting per week. And again, 4 hours for that meeting, that weekly meeting. So it is a commitment. If you commit to doing this, you're in it for the full cycle. I do not know whether there will be a Zoom capability. The only way that will take place if it is agreeable to all parties present. So we will not know until the process begins. Those are my notes on this. Kim?
Do we know what time of the day the meetings will be?
So typically the first meeting is actually to come to agreements on what those parameters are going to be moving forward. But historically, the last round of negotiations were essentially started at 4 o'clock over at a classroom at the band's school, and would go into the early evening.
The other,
I think we did one meeting a week for a series of weeks. That's what we had agreed to at that time.
and the other issue that came up at the SU meeting is that these meetings will not be in conflict with our board meetings.
Right.
Okay, Tim?
When is it decided if these meetings are going to be open or closed negotiations?
To the public?
Yeah.
That's agreed upon in that first initial meeting with the union.
Okay, Ruby?
So just to go back to what you're hearing from Pietro in terms of representation, so is the idea that there could be 1 to 2 individuals from Vernon and SD and SU?
It's open, it's open. Yes, it's open.
And that is significantly different than historically what has happened.
Historically, there were no representatives from any board on the negotiating committee.
Okay.
But when I brought it up with Pietro, he strongly encouraged me to change that.
And just because I think I've heard that from Pietro before, in a conversation at some point I heard from him, and I just want to clarify that it sounds like that's the standard. Like that's more. We are a little bit of an outlier in what historically we've done. So this would be putting us in alignment with what other districts around the state do. That's what I remember hearing from
So
him.
I-
correct.
And I was privy to that same conversation, that we must be at that table.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Just,
Tim, just what,
No.
Tim,
In fact, this is in the statute, that the school board negotiates all contracts. So statutorily, we should be representing.
and again, minimally 2 people.
Is there a maximum?
Don't know,
Sorry.
don't know. So let the boards come in. Sean,
decades ago, there was, from the District 6 board, representation in this process.
Decades.
okay,
And
Did I just
statutorily,
share? Oh, I'm sorry.
statutorily, we can name people as our proxies if that's what we want to do, but we don't want to do that, so we're changing how we've done it in the past.
Not
And
to
we-
say the exact same thing, it's just that we have followed the will of the board
Mm-hmm.
in past negotiations.
okay. But definitely, board members need to be at this table. Right. Ruby,
Are you looking right now for people to step forward?
that would be great.
I
Well,
would be happy to step forward. I do think it is a commitment of time, and I have an ability to be flexible on my schedule.
Okay, great.
I would step forward as well.
Ruby? Kim? Wow, we are really moving forward. That is great. Thank you very much. And that does not preclude anyone else from stepping forward at this point. So, or thinking about it and sending an email to Anne and to me, and that would be great. Okay, thank you. Ruby and Kim, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, all right. So the next item that's on the agenda, it reads policies that mandate reports to the board. We have a couple of lists floating of policies that require reports to the board, whether annually, semi-annually, quarterly. We need to ascertain that these lists are absolutely correct. And that means divvying up the policies and reading them carefully and noting where the annual is sometimes well embedded in the policy. But it would be helpful if board members would step forward and not tackle all the policies that are on the website, but maybe 10 of them, and we just go through it in that way. Okay, there are a couple of lists, as I said, out there, and I would share them with you if you would step forward to do this kind of legwork. Does that make sense, Ruby?
I think it does. I'm not. I know that I've seen some of the lists you're talking about, but I'm not clear on whether or not everyone. I know that I just don't know. If I feel a little confused about the process, I am very eager to see the process through.
Good, thank you very much.
but-
So Ruby, you are one of those individuals who started to compile a list. And there is another list out there. It would be nice to have multiple eyes on the process. To go through and just make sure that that no policy is slipping through the cracks.
One follow-up question. Does this work live in the policy and amendment committee, or is this really board, like something that's gonna be happening in the board meetings? Like, are we ripping this apart and saying, okay, this is the work we're doing here in this space or in the policy and amendment committee?
Tim, do you want to address that?
Yeah, the Policy and Amendment Committee reviews policies, but the existing policies on the books, there's over 100 policies. It's one of the primary responsibilities of the full board to see that those policies are being implemented. So the responsibility falls on the full board to see that policies are carried out to the fullest.
Okay, I think
That
it's
would be my response as well.
yeah.
Yes.
I do think that it is, you know, as you think about what type of focus we have in our future, our coming up retreats, whatever they are, I think this might be a good one, you know, and that might be a good place to aim for having a better understanding of what these policies are and how we interface with them. Not to say that I don't agree that, I agree that I agree with your assessment, but I also think it's a bear of a project, and so, you know, allowing for space that's not just in these board meetings to discuss it, I think would be valuable.
I think the first step in the process is the grunt work of reading these policies and making sure that we really are targeting the ones with annual reports. And as I've gone through the policies, sometimes that reference is in the third paragraph. Okay, it's sort of like not glaring. So I would love multiple eyes on this, and that would be great. And again, divvying up the workload, as Tim said, going through 100 policies is monumental for 2 or 3 people. So it'd be nice if we could divvy this up, and discussion about it would occur after we've done that work. Matt,
Just to clarify, what you're asking is for us,
I'm asking for volunteers.
Volunteers,
Yes.
board members, to review the policies, to identify which policies have within them the requirement of reports to be made to the board.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I could certainly help with that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Colleen?
I can as well.
Okay.
I would be happy to help in the respect that I've done that work like 3 times now.
Yeah.
Just if, you know, just to like the passing of the baton, so you can look at the various documents that exist. We can do that together.
Right. And there is also a spreadsheet that Shannon Kelly has put together.
Yeah.
So there's work that's already been done. I just want to make sure that it's absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
And that we're not missing anything. Okay. So Matt, Colleen, Ruby.
I have to help.
Okay. Kim, thank you very much. All right. Okay. And Liz Adams, I see your hand up.
Well, you know, I'm not on the board, but I go to all the policy and amendment committee meetings. I think for now and for future reference, if wherever it is in the policy, could be highlighted in some way so that it's easy to find, or put at the very bottom of the policy so that, you know, in the future, people aren't going to have to go through and read through all of these policies, because that's a lot of work. And to highlight it would make it easier in the future.
I totally agree. I think that's great. So in terms of doing this work, let's figure out a plan, and because it's more than just identifying, I think, what the reporting schedule is, but rather as well what the report should look like, right, what the policy is mandating. So we want to make sure that we have all the fields of information as we go through it this time around. Okay. Colleen, did I see your hand? No. All right. Okay, thank you. So Matt, Colleen, Ruby, Kim. Thank you. And Liz, great suggestion. All right, so now we are up to the proposed calendar of presentations for 2024-25. And I had hoped to have hard copies of, but it is online and it is attached to the agenda, today's agenda. So it's open for discussion at this point. This is a draft, this is a proposal.
Can I speak to it then?
Oh, yes.
So I did bring some hard copies.
Oh, great, thank you.
The first set is essentially notes, takeaways from the board admin retreat in June. That's kind of how we synthesized the feedback. And that was on a spreadsheet shared with you a while back with I think there was a number of different buttons at the bottom of the spreadsheet that you could click on. Here's just a hard copy of that.
Okay, so let's all have a copy of this in front of us. That would be great.
So as that is coming around, I do now also have a draft of the calendar of presentations. So, and as we were just talking about identifying policy to presentations, we have included that in the calendar the past 2 years. It is in this current draft, as well as another starting place, maybe to compare Ruby with your document. So again, just to summarize the proposal, based on feedback that we heard last spring, the ask was to reduce the number of presentations throughout the school year, balanced with a meeting focused on board work, and then the second meeting or another meeting in the month focused on deep dive into presentations, really identifying data sources. So the colored calendar, you'll see that there are topics for presentations and then an essential question tied to that topic. This is work that we did just last week with representatives from the board and the leadership team to kind of work on the initial draft that I'd shared at the last meeting in August.
Can I just chime in a little bit?
Yep.
In terms of a presentation, I'm looking at a piece of paper up there in the lighting fixture. How odd. I'm sorry, I was totally distracted. In terms of the presentations, the first meeting of the month, I believe, there will be time to ask questions. We're not going to delay questions for 2 weeks for the issue to grow cold, but it will enable us in that second meeting of the month to return to the issue with follow-up questions as well. So I just want to add that. And as you look at these two handouts that you've gotten, one is the calendar with dates on the left-hand side, and the other is, for example, if you go 2 pages in, well, 1 page in, you'll see September. So these are going to be, the white sheet is going to identify the essential questions on a presentation by presentation basis. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank
Yeah.
So again, the approach this year would be to do just that, limit the number of presentations, but expand the depth, really clarify the data sources, and then rather going from meeting to meeting with a new presentation, we can focus on a presentation and then come back to it in a follow-up meeting. So we feel like that we're digging a little deeper this year, based on the approach the last 2 years. Again, a concept that came out of the retreat was to think of an opportunity to come together as a school system with 3 summits. So looking at how we engaged with each other in the June retreat and how do we match that periodically throughout the year. So the concept was we would do that 3 times, at the beginning of the year, right in the middle of the year, and then at the end of the year. So this proposal would ask for a summit on September 10th. That would start at 5 o'clock. We would have dinner available. Some downtime for chatting and talking with, getting to know one another a little better outside of the meeting. The meeting would then be warned to start at 6 o'clock. And you can see the essential question that we will do our best to answer on September 10th is what is our CIP and how will we invest in carrying it out this school year? Then you can see there are specific data sources that we've identified. So an overview of the CIP and the action steps, current data points that we've identified. We do have VTCAP data from the summer. We'll start with where we are in terms of graduation rate. We'll do an overview of discipline. And then we'll also analyze our professional development plan for the school year ahead. So that really sets kind of the foundation for big picture thinking and how we're approaching the school year. And then you'll notice, aside from some of the other presentations that are aligned, the other summit would take place in February, where the essential question is what trends and gaps are we seeing in student performance? How well are our systems of support, including coaching, programs at the Career Center, impacting our students academically? So it's kind of like a mid-year report card, like where are we in comparison to how we started the year? How's our professional development initiatives been tied to the work currently in that point in the school year? And then of course in June, we would have an end of the year report. We'd be looking at the summative results of all of those systems, of the professional development plan, the academic and behavioral data, and it'll also, I think, set us up for thinking about goals ahead that we could work on collectively at a board retreat this coming June.
And this is where the white sheet is critical, because if you go to the February date, February 2025, the central question is here, that's a match for the calendar, but there's an elaboration going down the page with additional questions raised. And so this represents the tabs at the bottom when you're online and you're looking at the document.
So this is a new approach. I think it's a bit innovative compared to what we have been doing in terms of thinking of our entire school system. I feel like we've had some really good planning meetings with board reps and admin reps. My hope will be, if supported tonight, this approach, begin planning for that September 10th summit, which will kick us off to the school year. And then, of course, you can see the other essential questions that we'll be analyzing throughout the school year, which again were takeaways from the board retreat in June. I think it's a comprehensive approach. It'd be really cool to come together as a school system 3 times a year and just see what that looks like. Give board members an opportunity to learn from each other, and an opportunity for board members to see kind of the full admin team in action and how it may look different from school site to school site based on where we are. And again, another thing that we discussed at our meeting last week was, I think this has been coming through in some meetings, the idea is not to just, present everything that's going great. The approach is to be really real about like what our data is telling us. Really identify, what are we proud of, but could still be better at, and what are we not so proud of? Where do we have to absolutely see a change in the trends of the data? Because we do have that. So the approach isn't to kind of whitewash everything looks great, we're all doing a great job, here's a fancy presentation. But it's to, celebrate the great things that we are working on, and also recognizing areas where growth is needed. So that's the concept.
So I can't quite see this entire line. So if anyone wants to add to this or sit with this for a moment. Ruby.
First, I'd like to just kind of commend your work. I do think that there's a lot of innovation here, and I definitely see it's a lot of work. And so I think that's really wonderful. Thank you. I have a question that it could be that it's here and I'm missing it. But, and I know that you kind of referenced the retreat in June, and this is coming out of that. My recollection from that retreat and where we ended that was we had a lot of collaborative work in the room where we were kind of like working on what are the goals, what should they be. But I don't feel like that. I thought the end result was, I feel like Bryn was saying Whitney would work on assembling, like putting them together and presenting them. And I might have missed it, but I haven't seen them. And so and as much as I am sure that these refer back to it, I'd really like to see a stronger thread to, if there were I think there were like 5 goals or 3 goals, whatever they were that we boiled them down to in that retreat, having that be really clearly, like, so that as we go through the year and those are our touchstones, I'd like to see that more clearly presented somehow.
Yeah, and that is the focus for that September 10th summit, would be to really highlight where those framework goals and those 3 main goals, and you'll be able to track along the school year how we're approaching those goals with the various essential questions that we develop.
Okay.
But the white sheet, the white packet, is really the outcome of the information collected on June 18th. And that's been synthesized into 9 to 10 essential questions.
Okay.
But that's different than, I felt like the work that, and it was, it was a retreat, so it wasn't, my recollection could be wrong, I thought that there were some goals that are presented maybe to the AOE or something like that were a little bit more succinct than this white, like this feels like work notes, like,
right.
And I feel like what I'm looking for is more executive board level, like here are the things that are going to be our focus, and it's a little bit more succinct.
Yep.
And that's the piece that I think is a helpful tool to us as the board interfacing with this document.
Yeah, and that would be the goal for how we kick off our first summit on the 10th.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So when I go through the PowerPoint having to do with the leadership retreat, I see 3 goals. One being ELA and math, and increasing proficiency. I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to. Yeah. The second one being graduation rate, and the third one being a greater sense of belonging. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. So I sort of isolated those in the packet.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Tim?
So, my recollection of we are moving ahead, most definitely. And thank you for all the work put into this calendar. But a major shortcoming I saw at the retreat was a lack of true deep collaboration with the board on setting the goals. In fact, I raised my hand in that retreat and said, what about health and safety? And the response was, well, the goals were set on September 10th by the administration. Goals are important. You know, they inspire innovation. They raise the district to that next level of excellence. They inspire people to really be inventive and to work hard towards achieving those goals. What was never asked of the board was, do you have any other thoughts on goals? Looking through these, I have questions about the literacy goal for BUHS, or does BUHS just have one goal, graduation rate? What about, we can name a lot of other goals that the high school might pursue. And again, safe and healthy schools, given the primacy, the primary importance of maintaining safe and healthy schools. And given the data on our youth risk behavior survey, why don't we have a goal to show evidence that our schools are safer, calmer, fewer fights, fewer suspensions, and so on? What confuses me about the calendar is you have, on the second page, you have family engagement. Great.
Okay, wait a second, let me get there. On the second page, you have,
Second page in October,
and,
the discussion is family engagement. To what degree are we able to increase and measure family engagement?
right,
Great question, great topic. Why is that not a goal? Why isn't that not spelled out as a goal?
I think the fact that it is an essential question that we're going to present to the board and the community, it very much is a goal.
Yeah, I'm giving you examples of why we really should, it would have been better had we been consulted more, really. Panorama, major question I have is, should the goal be for each and every school to achieve national norms? As stated here, the goal is for an average to increase a sense of belonging. What about school climate?
okay, where are you with Panorama on this?
You don't need to
Oh, okay.
refer to
I think
it.
you're
Well,
here.
it's on the green sheet. It's the fourth goal. You had three, there's really four.
Okay,
On the last page on the goals, you have climate goal. By June 2025, student climate survey data will show an increase of 10% in favorable responses and a sense of belonging.
Mhm.
Why not student climate? We aren't going to settle this now, but my point is that the board was never really asked, what do you think of these goals? There's a great presentation by Bren on the EL and the math goals. Those I applaud. We had really good data on how they were established and where we're going. Only EL and only math. But the district, to really rise to move ahead, we should address these other, I think if you consulted the board, leadership councils, and the community, they could inform the administration on a number of other goals that we should be pursuing.
Yeah, and we do work with all of our stakeholders in identifying goals, and I think you're speaking to two different plans. One, like an overarching plan for the school, the supervisory union, as an umbrella plan. And then under that umbrella plan identifies individual school goals. Every school's at various different places in their growth and development, so each school is going to have specific goals that they're looking to improve around sense of belonging. Right, sense of belonging is a pretty big topic. Do your kids feel safe when they go to school? Well, they may feel differently when they go to BUHS versus Guilford. So that's where individual school plans really differentiate and identify what are the data points that's going to move this school forward to meet the overarching goal of sense of belonging or increasing literacy rates and math rates.
How does the board and collaborate with the schools on those goals?
I think this is a really good example of how we're going to try to do that this year. And I think all of the presentations that we have given over the past 2 years have tried to answer those questions.
Well,
But in 11 different schools,
if I can just.
So can I just, I'm wondering if, as we consider what has worked in this process and what needs to be tweaked, a consideration of how we go about it for 25, 26. And perhaps what we need to do is begin working on this process collaboratively long before we're hitting June. Maybe the same way we tackle finance and we begin the process early. Maybe we need to do this kind of grunt work in a very different way as we move forward. I'll give the floor back to you in a minute, but one thing that also occurred was concern that, and this happened in meetings, but real concern that we're having this conversation at the end of August, at the very beginning of the school year, when you want this plan in place for the beginning of the school year. It seems to me that this kind of discussion needs to take place immediately after that admin board retreat in June, that we should be doing this work in July. And that's hard to do because July is typically a month off, but maybe it can't be a month off because this work needs to take place in July so that we're in better shape at the very end of August. The floor is back to you, Jim.
No, I applaud what you said because that was another shortcoming I saw in this plan, that it just replicates the same process, so we would be in the same place approving goals at the end of August. It really doesn't improve in that process. But there's a lot more to say about goals. Multiple data points, it's basic about triangulating. Paul Smith brought that up. Do we just have one data point for each goal so you can check it off and move ahead? I don't think we want that. We want to really show that we've achieved the goals that we've established. And then, I hate to bring this up, but eventually, soon, I think it would behoove the district to have a 3-year plan. Just as we have a 3-year capital plan, to really think ahead, a 3-year plan, for instance, a goal of by 2027, every school in the district will surpass the normative scores on the Panorama climate surveys. Long-term goals like that.
Matt.
I wonder, as we continue exploring the role of leadership councils, I particularly like, Mr. Stino, your your comment about the schools delving deep into the specific needs and recognizing that each school's needs can be vastly different. I wonder if further consideration for board members on leadership councils to be inquiring with principals about the specific goals for their representative schools. If that could be something that leadership councils could be tasked with.
definitely.
Julianne.
Sure. I've been involved in the continuous improvement planning for quite a while when I was working in central office as curriculum coordinator and as principal. And part of it is this is how the Agency of Education moved to this model, because it's not the same type of process as you might see goal setting in private industry or other organizations. I mean, it is schools are constantly, we are doing the work and every day we're getting data, right? we're seeing every day how is this working. And so, well over a decade ago, the state really wanted schools to be able to act, to be able to have a plan that acknowledged that reality, that you are constantly supposed to be looking at your data and then changing up your goals, making new plans, and that's why it's called continuous improvement. And so there's a danger of having too many goals, for example. There's, that can really water down the process. Something like literacy, like seeing our literacy rates in the district, like that's a flashing red, right, urgent issue that's an all hands on deck and a heavy lift. And so the continuous improvement plan by design is pretty large grain in the type of goals that you see. And then the collaboration comes in how? Okay, how are we doing this? And that's where the leadership councils can really speak to, well, this is how we're doing this at Dummerston School. Because all schools are in different places with family engagement, but we all can have goals to increase and improve our family engagement. And so that's where the collaboration comes in, is in the how. But these, the goals that we set are, they're large grain, and they're designed to, change and evolve year to year. And yes, to long-term planning, I think we do that as well. But this setting this goal that's kind of constantly ongoing allows us to every day ask ourselves, is this leading to this, right? Is this decision is going to increase literacy proficiency rates? Is it? If it is, I'm doing it. And those kinds of questions happen every day at school. So it's definitely not just let's all wait till July and look at it, because teachers aren't here in July, right? And they are the people that are implementing these goals and receiving the information. So they are constantly thinking about it and in process on it. So it's just a little bit of background to understand kind of what this CIP thing even is.
I am hearing a need for greater forward involvement in this process. So we need to start that early. I'm gonna say something, and then you can. I think Mark, you can tell me if I'm missing the mark here. My assumption is kind of that this document is what's going to guide you and your staff in knowing what reports you're preparing, but it's not replacing necessarily. The board may have its own work that it's doing. So one example of something, and I missed this in an earlier iteration, so it wasn't part of any notes that I sent you previously with comments. I know that this board is interested in, I think, asking ourselves, how are we engaging with the leadership councils? How's that working? How do we ask for information? What is our relationship to them? And that's, something that ongoingly we do because we have touchstones of getting information from them. There might be a reference point to family engagement, but there's no specific, moment in this calendar that says, how are we interfacing with the leadership councils? And I think the reason it wasn't a huge flag to me is that in my mind, I'm assuming that as part of our board, that's work that we as a board might do. You, as the superintendent, would be implicated in that. You'd be part of that conversation, but there might not be a presentation coming from you or your leadership. Right. So is that an accurate kind of view of what this document is in the board work?
For sure. Yeah.
With that in mind, I feel like it feels like this really is this document is a step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. I think there's clarity that we need to get to, and we're in the baby stages still of our district, and so I think that we are still learning how we as a board interface with this process, and so I would appreciate in terms of the next moment of evolution is asking all these questions about the next process when we re-engage. But I certainly think, and I know that Vernon's has approved this
document. I don't know if moving forward and, I think that this is ready for prime time and ready to go. It's like a living document. It could change, it could shift, but I think it's a really good work. It's a reflection of good work.
Great, thank you.
I know one of the important points that came up in meetings is the need for flexibility and the need potentially, as we go through this process, which is very different, to assess it and maybe take a pause and tweak it midstream. Tim.
Yeah, one of the perennial problems with our calendar is that we seat new board members in March. February is election time. After March, we're gearing up towards the end of school. It's too bad that our board calendar doesn't sync with the admin calendar. But quickly, to get back to what Ruby was saying, family engagement. Quite a while ago, I suggested the AOE Family Engagement Survey to use as a data point to measure how well we're connecting with families. That's not reflected here. I'm not ready to, it's a step forward, but I would like to have one more pass at this, and before approving our plan. Because once we approve this, we might revisit it, but it's pretty well done. But a question for you, Mark. Again, getting back to that September 10th all-important CIP share out. In your mind, would these 4 goals be it, or would the administration be open to suggestions from the board for more, for 1 or 2 or 3 more goals?
I think we're always open to suggestions.
I would hope that as we go into the summit and an agenda is presented, that as with any agenda, we can comment on that agenda and amend the agenda because it's not meeting our needs.
We can't predict the outcome of the summit.
No.
Right? You do it, you get feedback, and then that leads to next steps. So, we're not stale in our thinking. Of course we're open to suggestions and feedback. That's the point of having a conversation and having something. Not to say this is what it is and sorry, no feedback.
Okay.
No, the opposite.
Okay, yeah. Kim?
I just, actually it's more of a clarifying question for Tim in terms of why he thinks we need more time on the calendar. And, it's very, it's put out there. Is it how you or other people want it completely? No, but it's something it's building towards what we all want in the end run. And it's, like Mark said, it's almost like a livable document where we can change things around as need be. But I think we're looking for perfection when it's something that we're not going to achieve and get everybody's wants and needs on the calendar, because then we're gonna have presentations every meeting, because somebody wants this, somebody wants that. Everybody's goals are gonna be different. How many goals are we gonna have? Are we gonna have 20 goals for the entire district? A lot of this is stemming from the retreat that we had. And we went over, we had those conversations and we discussed what we felt as a group was most important. And I feel like we're kind of backtracking now on all of that and all of the work that we did. And I think, there is some, after the retreat, having board members meet with admin to to look at the calendar and come up with those questions, and also the CIP, what we want as our goals is vital. And I think, next year, after the retreat, we have meetings with admin to go over those, just to verify, yes, this is what we recall, these are the goals that we want. But I think waiting on this, and I think it's a waste of time. A lot of time has been put into this already, and to make changes now, I think it's gonna be a lot of work for admin when we're starting school now.
Sean?
I hope I'm doing the right thing. If I'm not, please let me know. But I would like to make a motion that the WSESD board work collaboratively with the administration and to implement the 24-25 evergreen calendar that has been presented.
Okay, so a motion is on the table, and I'm gonna work to restate it, that the WSESD board work with administration on the calendar as it exists right now.
And I would say the evergreen calendar.
And the what calendar?
Evergreen calendar.
I'm sorry, I
It's
can't.
the living document, it's like an evergreen.
Evergreen. Evergreen. Oh, that's an expression I haven't heard. And yes, and that it is an evergreen, that it is a living, breathing document. And that means it can be changed as we go through this process. Right, okay. So that is the motion.
I will second
And it is seconded,
Point of order.
and yes, point of order.
I need clarification. I really don't understand that motion.
Okay, let's get that motion. Can I hear that motion back, please?
Sean, motion that the WSESD board work collaboratively with the administration to implement the 24-25 evergreen document. I guess it should be a presentation.
As presented.
As presented tonight, this evening.
Does that mean we're approving the calendar?
I think that's.
Point of order, I think we need, Kim seconded, but then we're open for discussion.
Okay, I'm just getting my thoughts together right now before I say anything. Okay. Okay, so the motion, as I'm hearing it, is that the WSESD is committed to work collaboratively with admin on the calendar as it exists as an evergreen document. Does that sound? Okay, so that is the motion. It has been seconded and it's open for discussion, and that means it's open for clarification. So, Tim.
Okay, I understand it now. And I would be fine with approving the first page of the calendar, because after that September 10th meeting, then we might have more goals. And the goals should be reflected in the rest of the year, what our activities are. Because right now, like in January, you have extracurricular activities. How does that reflect our goals? I don't yet know. So I think that if we wait until after September 10th, we would have a lot better sense of what the goals are, and we would have a better sense of how to lay out our agenda for the rest of the year.
Okay, so as an example, you raise January and extracurricular activities. How do we engage students beyond the school day and outside of the school? And you're asking, how does that reflect our goals?
Yeah, as an example.
Okay, and so the goals for me, as a member of this board, the three goals that I went through earlier, extracurricular activities are critical to student engagement, to student commitment, to remaining in school, to graduation rates, to a greater sense of belonging. And if you have students engaging in different ways, and I think about the arts, I think about music, I think about different means of expression, then we're going to see greater confidence in a young adult having to do with ELA, and math, and sitting in a classroom at a desk. That physicality is total. So, so did I make a convincing argument there?
And that is exactly the kind of discussion that would come from a September 10th meeting on this.
Yes, but I can do that right now.
Well, do you want to go through the whole calendar?
No, I don't. No, but what I'm saying is, the example that you pulled out,
Mm-hmm.
I can track it back to those three goals. So I do think that, for me, we're in a very different state from the one we were in last year. I see a greater sense of collaboration. I see a real effort to limit presentations to the very issues that the board has said we want. We want data. We want data that enables us to do board oversight. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's a really strong beginning. And I think the only way we're going to see how this works is to begin to go through the process. Now, September Summit is the beginning of the process. I agree with you. And I do think that for the health of our community, we need to look beyond September at this point. With the understanding that this is a work in progress and it's flexible. It did come up at a meeting that I asked, are the various presenters going to be comfortable possibly with being told, no, we're gonna hold off on that. We're not gonna do that presentation, okay? Because what is needed as we're going through a new process is something very different than that next presentation. How comfortable are administrators going to be hearing no? So, and what I heard was there is flexibility with this. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Now I'm gonna be quiet and be board chair. Matt.
I too find myself a bit confused. I am enthused by the work being done with administration, and I agree that the goals should continue to be talked about and collaborated with the board. The motion leaves me a bit perplexed though, because I'm not sure what the alternative is. I'm of the mind that we will continue to work with administration regardless. Like I find myself baffled a little bit.
Sean.
The reason I made the motion was I sort of intimated from what Mark said, is that if this is accepted, then it can start the process moving forward. So that's why I made the motion.
Brian. Yes.
From my point of view, the reason we have goals at this level is to take a high-level view. I see what is written on this document as providing a high-level view. And it's important for us to know how it is implemented at various levels by various people throughout our whole system. But it's not necessarily our job to figure out and tell everybody exactly how to do that from our level here. And we want to get reports through leadership councils and so forth of how things are being implemented. And we might want to give suggestions then. But at this point, we need to set the tone for the whole district about what we think our big important issues are. And then give people the freedom within that to act on that and implement it at their specific sites and within their specific classrooms with specific students throughout the whole organization. So I'm in favor of this. I think we should give it a try. I'd like to approve it, and I'm excited about the next meeting that we have, especially in September, when we see how that turns out and how we might, what we'll learn from that, from doing that.
I also think we need to be very open to the fact that we need to critically assess this process as we go through it, and recognize that we, given this discussion, may or will need to do it differently as we approach the spring. I see, no, I know, I do see her, I'm just letting there be a pause, which is not a bad thing. Pauses are good. So Ruby.
I want to call the question.
So, I did bring my Robert's Rules of Order because I anticipated that, that might take place. And in calling the question, all discussion ends for the moment. That needs to be seconded.
Second.
Okay. And in calling the question, and it is seconded, it needs a 2/3 majority to proceed. And that will be a roll call vote. I want to be very, very clear how that voting process proceeds. In calling the question, if you vote yes to this motion, that means you are voting to end all discussion and to move to a vote. If you vote no, that means you are voting to continue discussion. Is that correct? That is correct. Okay. So this is calling the question. And I'm going to do a roll call vote in reverse order. All right, and I'm the last one on the list by virtue of my last name. So, I am going to vote no. Translation, I want discussion to continue. Matt?
Nay.
I'm sorry,
Nay.
meaning you want discussion to continue.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Okay, Colleen?
I'm sorry, I think I just got confused and I wasn't 2 seconds ago.
Okay, if you vote no.
Yes,
If you vote no, that means you want discussion to continue. If you vote yes, it means you want to bring it to a vote immediately.
yes.
So you're voting yes. Okay, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll repeat it as many times as necessary, and you can repeat it as you vote, to be very clear. Kim?
Yes.
Okay. Eva's absent. Sean?
Yes.
Ruby?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Anne?
Aye.
The ayes have it. All right, so, which means that, we bring it to a vote immediately. All right, so we are going back to the original motion, which is to restate it, the WSESD, will work collaboratively with admin to work on the calendar as an evergreen document. That is the motion. And it has been seconded. And I am going to do a roll call vote, just to be very clear about this, okay? All right, so, Anne,
Aye.
Tim,
No.
Ruby,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
okay, Kim,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Colleen,
Yes.
Matt,
Aye.
Deborah, aye. All right, the ayes have it. Okay. This discussion is by no means concluded. That's what we've been talking about, okay? We will have our summit on September 10th. That's right, and that will be in lieu of the SD meeting. And just to be very clear, the SU meeting, which takes place on the next day, will occur.
Yes.
Okay, just being very clear about that.
Can you repeat, so did you just say that the summit meeting will replace our?
SD meeting, it's
Okay.
taking place at the same time as our SD meeting.
Right.
Yes, on that Tuesday.
I, that's really good clarity, but I thought that there was, I thought there was some amount of discussion. I thought that there was going to be discussion about whether or not that was what we as a board wanted to do, or whether it was going to require an additional, it was, I mean, I could be wrong, but I thought that was what was happening.
I don't recall whether it's in the minutes of our last meeting or not. It is not in the minutes of the last meeting, and I don't recall because there've been so many meetings, and it's the cards are shuffling together. Okay, so, the summit is scheduled for September 10th.
The concept was to supplant the meetings, the SD meeting and the burn-in meeting, but then Ann was very clear it would not supplant the SU meeting.
Right, and I guess I thought that there was, I mean, from a calendar perspective, it's very clear that it supplants it. I don't know that I've adequately heard, you know, our board state, yeah, we can give away a meeting like that. And I think the work that's happening is really important. I also think we've got a lot on our plates. So it's just really being really conscious of three meetings out of the year are being removed from our normal rotation. That's all.
Okay, so, let's, regarding the summits, I'm gonna bounce it forward. The summit in, February, it may be that the SD board is not giving up its meeting. And it may be the summit, later in the year that the SD is not giving up. To give up, Ruby, thank you, because that would mean giving up 3 SD meetings over the course of the year. So I would like to put the timeframes of the summit, certainly for February and for June, on hold. And the way it's presented on the calendar right now, I believe it's with a big question mark, or a little question mark. Oh, it's no question mark anymore. Oh, sorry, the question mark has been removed. Okay, Yes, Kim.
An option that we could have, because Vernon meets on Mondays before our SD meeting, if we felt in February we need an SD meeting, we could see about meeting in doing the meeting on Monday and having our SD meeting on Tuesday.
On the next day.
I mean, I think that's something that we could change pretty quickly because superintendent's used to being at meetings on both those days.
Okay, with consideration to what Ruby has just presented, I really think we do need to change the February and the June and not give up our meetings, thank you. It's a lot to see in the moment, and that's why we work as a group, to have that back and forth. Okay, I'd like that to be to be the reality for second and third summits. The first summit, which is coming up right around the corner. Wow, it's right around the corner. I don't know how much flexibility really exists with that one. It might.
I mean,
It might.
my assumption has been that the one that's right around the corner is supplanting our meeting.
Yes,
You know, like
yes.
it's like in a few weeks.
It's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right, it's in 2 weeks, right. And I'm very aware, in thinking about agendas, that the next board meeting is on the 24th of September, which is quite a ways off. Kim?
I think it would be very eye-opening to see where we stand coming out of it. So I think, if doing it on Tuesday and we can see how far behind we are.
Right.
And where we have to make it up, and that, it'd be a good way to determine what we're gonna need to do in February and June, which I think we've already decided.
And we are becoming skilled at doodles and scheduling special meetings as needed. And I thank everyone for their flexibility in terms of that.
The vision for moving forward was dedicated meetings for board business, which would allow more board business to happen, and then cutting back on the number of presentations.
So true, but that cutting back on presentations allows the board to do board business. And I think that with in-depth presentations, we need the time, and I'm hearing that. So what are we looking at in terms of that second week in September? This board determines how we move forward.
I mean,
Ruby?
I think we should forge ahead and have, follow this meeting pattern and, it's like dipping our toe in the water and seeing how it feels. And the only, reason to adjust that is if you as a chair see something on the horizon that requires a special meeting or an executive session, which is just it's always the case.
Yes.
I assume you will
Yes.
tell us if we need more time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, everyone knows that we need more time.
Right.
Right. Yes. So there is a doodle out there right now, and we have taken executive sessions for the most part and moved them off of our regular board meetings so that we approach those meetings with fresh eyes and thoughts. So let's go forward, I'm assuming, unless someone objects right now. Let's go forward with the summit on September 10th, which will supplant an SD meeting. September 10, Tuesday, right? That is our regular WSESD meeting. So we are going with the summit instead. And we will resume board business on the 24th. And that will be also a recap of questions, thoughts raised as a result of the summit. Okay, Ruby,
And just for our information, the summits start at 5.
it starts at 5, it will be dinner, it will be the ability to mingle, it will not be recorded between 5 and 6. It is not a warned meeting between 5 and 6, it becomes a warned meeting at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So we are not discussing board business in any way between 5 and 6.
Got it.
Kim,
Just wanted to call out the location of the 924 SD meeting is in Putney.
wait 1 second. Okay, this is okay,
It's-
wait 1 second. 924, oh, you put the date, you put the locations in.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
They weren't there
I
when I
know.
saw this before.
And I love the policies that are listed too.
Yes,
But-
well, so, okay, right. So,
And those can be flexible as well, it's just placeholders to start planning ahead.
you mean in terms of it being in Putney?
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things. Okay, location. We got Putney. I've got to remember to go there. Oh, yes, thank you.
And the only reason I called it out is because we will not have a regular board meeting before we have to be in Putney. We will have the summit.
Yes, yes. So we have to remember that we have to go to
Yes.
Putney. I mean,
I
yes,
will
to
remind
Putney.
you.
No, we will send out a broadcast, an urgent broadcast. Everybody, don't just look at the agenda where it's Putney is in small letters. Right. The other, I just want to go to the other issue, and that is the policies that are listed. This is critically why we need an up-to-date list of mandated reports to make sure that nothing is slipping through the cracks. And I am not in any way being critical of board or admin, but only that ultimate responsibility with 100 policies. We want to make sure our policies are being adhered to. Okay. Additional thoughts, please, before we, additional thoughts.
What are
Tim.
we on in the agenda?
We're still on this point right now. That's exactly, we're still right here. We're not moving, we're at the calendar of presentations. Letter F, under board matters.
I thought we voted on it, and we couldn't discuss it anymore.
We're looking at this right now.
Okay.
We're not discussing, we voted on it, but now we're just looking at the dates and making sure we're all on the same page. Right, okay, Matt.
Rather, with not a lot of traction, I had suggested that we consider perhaps, given our financial situation, doing a potluck. But I hear Mr. Spino, you saying that it will be catered. I'm curious who, if we've identified a caterer for the event.
I'm not yet, no.
And in light of that, if there might be the will of the board to consider a potluck, that I just bring that again.
Well, that's up to the will of the board. I feel, and maybe I'm nuts, but I feel that we have 2 weeks to pull this off. And it doesn't feel like much time to do a potluck, although it doesn't take 2 weeks to make something. I do realize that, but I'm sort of, it's the will of the board. I keep my mouth shut. Will of the board, Sean.
I'm not much of a cook, so I don't think it would be good for me.
Sean, thank you very much, Sean. Kim.
It's also the will of the Vernon board. It's not just
Oh,
that we
Vernon
would need
is
to-
not here.
No.
Whoa, oh my goodness. Right, wow. And Vernon is not going to meet anytime soon, is it? No, there we go. Kim, and then, I'm sorry, Ruby, and then Sean.
I would think it would be wise to, given the time and, and this issue that it's not just our board we're talking about, I think we should move forward with the plan, have a catered one for the first one. And that can be a point of discussion, and because I think I'm open to the idea that I don't want to be a cook, but I can, but I don't even know how many people it is. I don't really have any sense. So once we're in the room, then we'll have a sense of, is this a doable thing? How would we do it?
And then I have to listen to dietary restrictions, and no, that's lovely. No, that's giving and caring. So let's leave this first summit that it's catered. I presume we don't even know the location yet.
We'll be here.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, I think you told me that.
Yeah.
Yes, we're gonna be in Coosa.
Yeah.
Okay, great, okay, and it will be catered, okay. Ruby.
I just going back to the just highlighting that location thing. I wanted to encourage you, Mark, to make sure that each of the leadership council chairs knows when we're coming. I know that that was really an engagement point with the leadership chair in Putney when we were there last year. She was really that leadership council made an effort to both welcome, clean up their space, like sparkle the school, and then there was a walkthrough. Each school might have a different approach to that. Each principal will have a different way of doing that, but having the leadership council specifically invited to do that would be great.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, all right.
I was gonna say.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sean.
No,
Yes.
that's all right.
Yes.
I was gonna say I agree with Ruby, and I would love to move along.
Meeting on the agenda.
Yes.
Oh, good. So, yes, Tim.
Before we move on, I think that all the board members should be seated at the table. And we have our student representative, Thea Wapaloki, who is our student board representative. So Thea, please have a seat.
Oh, great. I didn't even see you walk in, Thea. Wonderful.
Welcome, Thea, to the board.
And in honor of Thea's presence, I propose that we take a 10-minute break. It is 7:40 at this point. I know that we have to do fiscal report and administrative report, but we also need a stretch break, please. So we are going to come back at 7:50. Thank you very much. I am looking at my phone, 7:50. Right. Our break, it is 7:51. And we are opening up with the administrative report.
Okay.
Did I skip anything?
Policy G8.
Policy G8.
Well, the policy, I'm sorry, there's a moment under board matters having to do with the calendar of presentations and policy G8 continuous improvement plan. I asked for that link to be included so that we understand the ramifications of the calendar of presentations. I think we're ready to move on. I'm sorry, let's wait 1 second. Okay. So,
I really need clarification on this, because according to policy G8, the board votes on the goals for the district. Did we do that? Have we done that? It says our CIP policy calls on the school board to vote on the CIP goals for the district, so we haven't done that.
well, there was some question about that at our meeting, and whether at the end of the admin board retreat on the 18th, there was a vote having to do with a fist or fingers or something. That was not clear to me, that was a vote. And one thing that I asked is that as we go to the next admin board retreat, which I think is scheduled for June 24th, that we actually break up into our respective boards very formally and that we vote. So there seems to be some misunderstanding. It was very casual. I'm not aware of it having been a vote, personally.
And I agree, that was not a vote.
Yeah.
We discussed the EL and the math.
Right.
We applauded that, we gave a high five to those.
Right.
But we have not voted. That would be, I
Okay.
see that as a clear violation of
Okay.
GA.
Okay.
We have not voted.
So,
May I ask a question?
Ruby.
And this is kind of informational. So, to some degree, I think that Julianne referenced this, there's some process by which goals have to be reported to the AOE, right? Did that already happen?
Yes.
Is that part of from a timing perspective, like that probably happened shortly after the retreat?
The week after.
Okay.
It's the day or two.
And so maybe that was, one of the missing pieces that really wasn't articulated in a clear enough way at the retreat so that the board, because I also didn't really understand that, fist to 5 exercise as being a formal board vote. My assumption was that we were, before this summit piece, going to be presented with a document that would, even if it was just like a bullet point of the 3 to 5 things that we would then formally vote on. So I do think that in future years, being really deliberate and careful about that, the timing of that process would be really important. And I think I'm very much assuming, since it went to the AOE, like there is a document, or there's a list. And it could be that it is in the slide deck that was used, but I thought that there was going to be some processing or manipulating or something to massage that into a finalized thing. So if that document exists, it would be good to share that, and at a minimum have that be something that can become something that is formally voted on, just as a matter of course to move it along, and then for future years think about this in terms of logistically.
There has been discussion that in delaying a vote, we are in violation. It's the beginning of the school year. So, Tim.
I'd like to make a motion that the board vote on the goals for the district following the June 10th meeting.
September 10th.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Clarification, you said June 10th.
September 10th.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Wait a minute, I'm not hearing this correctly. So the motion is,
For the board to vote on the goals for the district following the September 10th meeting.
following the September 10th meeting, right, okay. All right,
And
so,
I seconded.
oh, that's a motion.
Yes, that you were motioning it.
Yeah.
That is a motion, that the WSESD board vote subsequent to the September 10th meeting on the goals. So does that, the clarification, does that mean we vote on September 10 or we vote on September 24th?
September 24th.
Okay.
Can I put in that motion the CIP goals, just so that it's very clear? Thank you.
Okay, and that has been seconded. Okay, so the motion is that the board vote on CIP goals on September 24. I'm wondering, do I need to do a roll call vote on that? Ruby?
Are we can we just?
Well, I'm sorry, yes, of course, it was seconded and we are open to discussion, of course, yes.
So I guess I had a question related to that September 10th summit meeting. I guess my assumption had been that in the presentation of the CIP goals in that meeting, there would be some the idea was to have a culmination, and whether it was implicit approval or, I don't know what you were thinking you were getting out of that meeting, but I guess I was kind of assuming we were all coming together and the end result of it would be, here's our CIP goals.
Here's a very clear understanding of what our strategic plan for the school year is. Here's what our goals are.
And so in that respect, I wonder if if there's an assertion of this board intending to make a vote. I would say by the latest, the 24th, but it could potentially happen if we're at a point where we feel that we can on the 10th. That's just an observation. I'm not asking for an amendment. I'm just observing that that's a reality.
So, there will be 3 boards meeting on the 10th. We can certainly split off on the 10th. So, how about a friendly amendment?
No, I'd rather have that time for deliberation. Retreats, not a lot, there's a lot of people there's not a lot of time for discussion. I'd rather have those 2 weeks for deliberation.
Okay, so the motion stands that the board vote on CIP goals on September 24th. Okay. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It carries. Thank you. All right, so any other business under board matters? Okay, we are moving on to the administrative report. Mark?
Okay, I'll dig right in here. So last week we had new teachers and staff welcome to the school district through a series of orientations. General feedback was the feeling of being very professional and impressive. We have distributed a survey just yesterday, actually. So when we receive those results from the survey, happy to share those at a near future board meeting. I'd like to highlight some of the things happening this week. In these past 2 days, we've engaged in professional learning at each school site, preparing for first day of school tomorrow. So tomorrow we welcome our students back for the school year, which is always an extremely exciting day in the school year. Some other systems that are moving forward and in place. This morning, had a central office Tuesday morning meeting, first one for establishing this new school year, and that's a meeting that takes place every Tuesday morning from now till the end of the school year. This afternoon, I'm engaged in an admin leadership planning meeting with the curriculum office and the special ed department. Those meetings take place typically on Tuesday afternoons, leading to the culminating admin meeting the first Friday of the month. So our first full day admin meeting is September 6th. Spent this Tuesday afternoon planning for it, and we'll spend next Tuesday afternoon planning for that work as well. Other systems that are getting ready to kind of take off, just so you have a sense of how central office works with our school leaders. Next week, a regular elementary school principal meeting will be started with representatives from central office. as well as a regular bi-weekly meeting with the team at the BU6 campus, including bands, VHS, and the Career Center. So these systems are starting up this week, and these are established systems, and it's important in how we set the foundation for our collaboration together for the school year. Other systems that we will highlight in more depth throughout the year is we do have EST coordinators at each of our school sites who, for the past 2 years, have met on a monthly basis to work on collaboration from school to school to really identify kind of a best practice for Windham Southeast. Again, 2 years ago, that was an invitation once a month. Last year, it was more of a, let's do this, let's establish this system, let's dedicate ourselves to meeting together on a regular basis throughout the year, and that was really good work. So we're going to continue that this year. Similarly, last year, MLSS coordinators met on an invite basis. This year, we're moving to really lock that system in as well, where those coordinators will meet on a regular monthly basis. So just trying to give you some big picture systems for how we're starting the school year and how we're working together to move the goals, which will be presented on the 10th in terms of the general CIP. So that's what this week has looked like, and most importantly, tomorrow's day one of kids in our buildings. So I plan on starting my day here at BUHS, then working my way over to Oak Grove and then Academy School. One of our topics at the central office meeting this morning was, let's pick some schools we're going to be in tomorrow morning because we think it really shows a united front, and I'm sure principals will appreciate seeing central office folks assisting them and welcoming their students with open arms and high fives, and good luck. So that's the general report for tonight, and thank you for your work on the calendar and establishing that for some clarity around next steps.
Well, congratulations, Mark, and to every principal and every administrator and every teacher and every family and every student on day one. Very exciting. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any hires and?
We do have a new hire in Dummerston, and I'll let Julianne.
Sure. So we have a guidance counselor who is on maternity leave until January 21st. We are able to introduce as a candidate Annette Wilson, who is actually a retired teacher from our district. And she is able to take on this position part-time, so she won't take all of Nicole's duties, but she will be able to provide support on a significant chunk of them. So we're excited about that. Annette served as classroom teacher at Dummerston School from 1996 to 2026 in grades 1 to 4. She has served as long-term sub at Manhattan and Walpole Elementary School. She also serves our community as a guardian ad litem. And she has a lot of experience teaching social emotional curriculum, including Second Step and Zones of Regulation. She has expertise in trauma-informed practices, relationship building with families, and access and community-based services. She has a bachelor's in psychology, so she's able to qualify for a provisional in school counseling. So that was a last-minute meeting we had I was so excited to talk to Annette about taking this position. So.
Thank you.
Are there any other hires that we should consider at this point?
Not that I have in front of me.
Okay, all right. So entertaining a motion having to do with hiring of Annette Wilson.
So moved.
Second? Second. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? Welcome, Annette Wilson.
Thank you.
Any resignations or
No.
not that you have? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so moving on to end of year fiscal audit.
All right. Yeah, so finance committee members already have this report, and this is the report that was sent out to the board last week. Maybe if I could just clarify the agenda, I'm assuming that the intent was to provide the overview of our fiscal year end that we're preparing for the auditors. That's the intent there. The audit is a whole separate process, and I'm glad to speak to that as well. This financial statement is what is being provided to the auditors who actually are on site at the central office this week for their usual testing as required by Vermont statutes annually. But what I've sent around is the financial statement for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024. And it's for the Windham Southeast School District. It represents on this first page the summary of the financial results. So we spent about an hour reviewing the bit of detail on financial statement here and the results for the fiscal year end. I'll abbreviate that overview, but if anyone wants to jump in or elaborate or any questions, feel free to do so. So what we're looking at is the first column of data on page 1. There is our adopted budget that would have been voted on back in March of 2023 for the 12 months ending, started in July 23, ending June 24, right? 62,704,000. You see that under expenditures on the bottom of the page. And then you see the negative 950,000. So that was the planned return of fund balance, or a planned deficit, meaning when you go to the top of that page in revenue, you see that that's a smaller number. 61,754,000, that's 950,000 less than the planned expenditures that our voters authorized. The next column of data there you see is the amended budget. So as you, I'm sure, recall, the only time we amend a budget is if we have a grant funded with no impact on our taxes, a grant funded award. So we have had several of those through the initiative of many of our educators applying for generally federal and sometimes state funds. Usually they're competitive grants. And subsequent to the annual meeting, you can see that we received another approximately $1 million in grant funding to bring us up to $64.2 million in our planned spending for fiscal year 24. The actual results of the year is in the third column over, year to date. So the actual spending was $63.4 million against that $64.2 plan. You can see that's within 1% variance. We like to see adhering to our budget plan closely, and once again, we have done that, and that's a reflection of very good systems, internal controls, a lot of collaboration with our principals, our teachers, our department heads, our facility managers, the whole system following the internal control procedures and abiding by the rules. So overall, The surplus deficit at the bottom of the page really does summarize the fiscal results into one number. The plan was to run a $950,000 deficit to refund prior year fund balance. You see that we actually ran $934,000 deficit, so that's essentially right on plan, a little bit favorable, right? We ran a little less deficit than we had planned, so very much on target. There was, when you look at revenues versus expenses, you can see that we had planned on 63.2 million in revenues, but we received 62.5. So there's a little shortfall in revenues, and yet we did not spend 746,000 of the budget. So when you take the revenue shortfall offset by this spending surplus, you get that $15,000 variance on the $63 million plan. So once again, very, very much on target. The second page is the same total amount of spending reflected on the object level rather than function level, which is on page 1, where it's direct instruction, support of students, the administrative costs, the maintenance and debt service. That's page 1's expenditure format. Page 2, same total, but it's broken down by salary, benefits, services, supplies, equipment, and so on. You can see by a far margin, our largest expenditures on page 2 are in salary and benefits, of course, because we are a people business, and salary plan, a budget plan of 28.6 million. We spent 28.6 million, essentially exactly on budget, and slightly favorable in the benefit arena, but still within 1% of our target. The professional services a little bit favorable, you see there, but offset by a little unfavorable in the supply budgets. So with all budgets, there's pluses and minuses, but we work very hard to manage the total in the end so that we stay within our tax-funded resources. Page 3 shows our fiscal results by school site. So again, on one page you're seeing the entire $63 million operation for the school district, but you're looking at it by school site. Most of the sites you see are within that 1% variance. A little bit of a variance higher than that at Oak Grove. That has to do with actually completing some construction in fiscal year 25. It's actually well underway as of today, because kids are in the building tomorrow, and we are pretty much wrapped up. But that pushed some cost into July and August, which is fiscal year 25. That largely attributes the favorable 279,000 you see for Oak Grove, and in Dummerston, it's the only other school where we're a little more than a 1% variance, and there we had some teacher turnover that resulted in a favorable variance. And when in our smaller schools, where we have a $3 million budget, when you look at personnel costs and things like family plan, it costs $28,000. When you have a few of those plan changes because of employee choices, you create some variances that can be greater than that 1%, and that is what we had in Dummerston. Some choices that were lower costs associated with employment, different plans. So there's the school overview. You know, our largest school, of course, is the high school, 19 million, almost exactly on budget with the 19.1 million budget and the 19.1 million spent. So we're very pleased with the administration's ability to implement the approved plan as discussed at our annual meetings with our public. The remaining reports, pages 4 through 13, are a reflection of the same information with some more detail. So for each school, like for example, page 4 Academy, you have the locally funded function within the school. So Academy Direct Instruction, you know, the largest category with all of our schools of activity and the resources that we apply for our public education services. So you can see there a $4.7 million budget there on the first line, and then expended $4.6 million with all of the functional areas that follow: student support, staff support, administration, maintenance, and so on. The second group there of data is the federally funded or grant-funded programs. Same format with functional summary. So the rest of the reports are each school with that little bit more information on the plan and the fiscal results versus the plan. So as we look at fiscal year 26 planning, you know, we're very much on track with what we had contemplated when we were sharing with the public the resources that we have available, you know, to support the fiscal year 26 budget. No surprise. So, happy to answer any questions. Yeah, Tim?
Yeah, a very specific question. The, on page 1, the $30,000 general fund transfer, what was that for?
Yeah, that's a legacy of the Guilford convention of having a sort of a standard fund transfer. At one point it was for a bus repurchase. We've repurposed that for general capital, but that's what that is. It's really no different than the general support we have for capital projects over time. At some point, we'll restate the way
So
that's
that
captured.
30K was for capital?
That's right.
Expenses? And then the other question, I'm just curious, on the last page, the regional career center, why the shortfalls in adult education programs and transportation?
Yeah, it's a terrific story there in terms of how that program's been revived. So what we have is a much more active instructor in the adult ed program. Mary Beth Cornell is doing a fantastic job. So when you look at the spending data there, what you're seeing is the far more active instructors being engaged because of a much higher enrollment. Even though you can see an unfavorable spending variance, and it's mostly in the paying our more instructors because we have a lot more a lot more adults attending the programming. That $24,000 is substantially offset by a lot more revenue that fully pays for that. So that overall that program is solvent. Okay. Any other questions? Very good.
All
thank you very much, Frank.
Sure.
All right, we are moving on to, consent agenda. And, so I presume because of the changes to August 13, 2024, I need to do this in 2 motions, I presume. Yeah, okay. So, is there a motion to approve the minutes of August 13, 2024?
Those have been updated online, you know, those
With
two
the amendments in place?
Those two
The
items
two
have been
amendments
updated.
that occurred earlier, yes,
Yep.
that are already in the
They're
record.
updated,
Yes,
yeah, online.
okay, thank you, right. Mhm. So is there a motion to approve the August 13, 2024 minutes with the 2 amendments?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion for approval of the August 20th, 2024 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. All right, we are moving on to new business. The Policy and Amendment Committee presents the following for a first reading. F1, Student Conduct and Discipline. It's a first reading. I want to say about this policy, this committee has been working on this policy since July 2023. We have been working on it for 13 months. This policy F1, Student Conduct and Discipline, reflects the voices, the concerns, the suggestions of a wide range of stakeholders in our community. Students, teachers, administrators, caregivers, community members. The committee has poured through documents used by academic institutions across the country, and we have worked to create a plan that suits the needs of our community. Please review this policy during this reading period. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Sean.
Yeah, I looked at that and read the whole thing very carefully this afternoon, and I must say that I was extremely impressed with the sensitivity of dealing with student conduct and discipline and how it related to all staff and parents and the community. So I think it would be really valuable to have that sort of made into bullet points so it would be very easily digestible for people. Because it's just, I think it's such a well-done policy.
Okay.
So I commend the policy committee for all the work that they have done.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, your suggestion is that it be reformatted?
No.
Oh, that
Just an additional bullet point so that somebody doesn't have to read 4 pages. Just sort of pick out the salient points.
Almost like a summary.
That's just an idea.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Matt.
I too would second that. I read the policy, and I found it to be really well written. Held a lot of evidence-based sentiment lens. I could see the work and effort and heart put into it. It was really well done.
Thank you. Thank you on behalf of the committee, administrators and board members. This was hard work. Yes, thank you. And it was actually hard to release it for a first reading. Okay, thank you. All right, so first reading. Before we move on, any other topic for new business? Okay. Unfinished business. Again, the Policy and Amendment Committee presents for re-adoption, action required, D4, educator supervision and evaluation. Is there a motion for re-adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Any other topic for unfinished business? And the last item, there is no need for an executive session.
Madam Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
A second, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:28. Thank you very much.
Recording stopped.